The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone. Hope you're having a great day so far, and thank you for joining us for a webinar on adventure photography with Lucas Gilman. My name is Sai and I'll be your host today. Some quick housekeeping items before we move ahead with the presentation. On your screen to the left is the GoToWebinar viewer through which you will see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can select an audio mode and ask questions. Our presentation today will last for about 40 minutes, after which we'll be open for Q&A. As we go through the webinar, please leave us your questions in the questions box you see on your control panel, and we will answer as many questions as time permits after the presentation. Last but not the least, this webinar will be recorded and sent to you via email in 48 hours. With the housekeeping items aside, let's move on to the webinar. We are privileged to have Lucas Gilman as our presenter today. Lucas is a SanDisk Extreme team member and a leading adventure photographer who has covered many international events such as the Tour de France, the X Games, the NFL playoffs, and more. Lucas is also well known for documenting the first successful kayak descent at Abiqua Falls in Central Oregon, and is going to show us a video of that today, which I'm really excited about. Lucas, we're very glad to have you with us, and thanks a lot for taking the time to do this webinar. With no further ado, I'll hand it to Lucas, who will take us through the webinar.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sai, and thanks everyone for taking time out of their Wednesday to tune into this webinar. Always a lot of fun, and we'll get right to it here. So again, as Sai said, my name is Lucas Gilman. I'm a member of the Extreme team, and we're going to show you right away sort of what my office can look like on any given day. This is the first ascent of Abiqua Falls. Enjoy. Bye. So that was the first ascent of Abiqua Falls. We shot that in literally 3 days. It took quite a bit of more time to put it together, but we had a lot of bad luck with weather and just miscellaneous things happening. So that was actually the first video that I ever produced. And just another housekeeping note, feel free to type questions at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll get to those at the end. But I shoot a lot of other things. I do video as well now, but we're going to sort of start off with a little history, sort of show you where I've come from before we get into the nitty-gritty and the technical of how to make yourself a better adventure photographer. So I've shot a lot of outdoor sports, Tour de France, Ironman, X Games. I love the X Games, although I have a little bit of a fear of heights, man-made heights specifically. But you got to get the shot right. Always looking for new angles, always looking to produce something a little unique and a little visually stunning. A lot of preparation goes into these shots. I do a lot of work for Red Bull, great client. I do a lot of amazing events around the world. One of my favorite events, big event every year, is the Kentucky Derby. I shot it for 6 years in a row for ESPN magazine. This is shot with a Nikon body and a 600mm lens with a 2x converter. And I spent all day trying to get this shot. And the point of the shot to me was to show the movement in the hooves, but also get the horses frozen. So I spent all day doing this technique and figured out eventually that 60th of a second was the proper shutter speed to get this. So I have to say a lot of the things I do, there's a lot of trial and error. And like with anything, producing something unique takes time. This is Barbaro winning the Kentucky Derby by the most lengths in current history. And this shot actually took 4 years to come together. They asked, I asked to do this shot every year to put a remote over the crowd at the finish line, and they said no for 4 years in a row. And eventually on that fourth year, before the Derby, they said, you can do this, but you need a $50 million insurance bond, which is being a freelance photographer, I was like, whoa, I don't know if that's going to happen. But luckily I was working for ESPN magazine at the time, and they said, oh yeah, we actually have an insurance rider more than that. So it all worked out, and it was sort of serendipitous that he won by the most lengths in current history. So love the Kentucky Derby. Lots of beautiful things. Sunrise at the Downs here. Also love cycling. This is shot in Peru. Little pan blur. Always looking for different angles. This is Project Bandaloop. The worst pictures I think anybody can take are pictures that they take just standing at their normal height. I think people should try to get higher, get lower. It always makes a different perspective. Neil Leifer, one of the most famous Sports Illustrated photographers, was about 5'2", and people said that the reason his pictures were so interesting is because he wasn't average height, but obviously there's a lot of other things involved in that. This is Big Sur, California. One of the things we're going to talk today are about shooting water and snow. I shoot a lot of kayaking and surfing, as well as snow sports. And if you're going to take one technique away from today's webinar, it would be to shoot either really quickly, and I mean like 3,000th of a second or faster shutter speed, or very slowly. For instance, this image is taken with a 10-second exposure. So if you're going to take one thing away, really make sure that you take that away, because it'll really make your pictures more dynamic and more interesting. Inversely, this shot here, 3,000th of a second, so really, really fast shutter speed. Love surfing. This is shot near Rio, right after sunrise. The Devil's Throat is what they call this. Again, a long exposure, 15 seconds, Lago del Elcho in the Patagonia region of Chile. And, to get your models to hold still for this really long exposure, 15-second exposure, it's almost like a tripod. You want them to have 3 points of contact, so 2 feet and maybe a hand on something. It'll give them a much better ability to hold still. Also giving them something to focus on. For instance, if it's, I told my brother to look at this is actually my brother David Gilman, to look at a rock across the way and focus on that rock and not move. And I basically had a little, like a whistle, so he knew when I was actually photographing, because the waterfall was very loud. So, but you can come away with some pretty interesting stuff. I lived in Jackson Hole for a long time, loved the Tetons. Back to this, another way you can improve your photography is by putting yourself in good situations, by shooting at the proper times of day. And when I say the proper times of day, there's no bad time to take a picture, but the picture will be much better if it's taken right after sunrise or right before or after sunset. So by taking that into account, the golden hours, as they're called, and shooting at those times, your pictures will be much better. So this is shot high noon. It's a pretty nice picture, but if it was a shot with the light that you saw earlier on that other shot, it would be much better. A lot of different events, shot Olympic volleyball. And technology is your friend. If you want to improve your photography, part of what I would recommend people do is to really read up and embrace technology. This was something that I did early in my career. This shot here was shot with a D1X camera, and I don't want to date myself, but I think this was shot around 1999 or so. And this was actually the first image that was ever published in Sports Illustrated magazine is a 2-page spread from a digital camera. And I went into the Olympic Training Center swimming pool and shot raw, which nobody was shooting raw at that time. And I just really wanted to see what the technology could do. And it really worked out, and I got lucky that they shot this. So for me, finding a first season, and I grew up in Colorado, son of a fly fishing guide, so I wanted to be outdoors and shooting things as much as possible. And I grew up skiing, so I went out and I found a first season, and I recommend anybody who's interested in getting into adventure photography, they find a first season. Find something you love, whether it's mountain biking or cycling or anything outdoors that you really love, because going out and shooting and really learning the nuances of the sport. And if you want to become a snowboard photographer, go out and shoot snowboarding exclusively to really get good at that. Because just because I'm good at adventure sports and I can shoot skiing doesn't mean I'm going to be a good snowboard photographer. So go out and shoot that specific sport that you want to be interested in. I love using lights. This is shot with a Nikon D2X and one strobe inside the tent, just overpowering the available daylight. Just always looking for new techniques. Push your gear. And when I mean that, I don't mean go out and in a rainstorm and get your gear completely swamped, but figure out what your gear will do well. Figure out what it does well and what it doesn't do well. For instance, this shot was early on, or not early on in my career, but it was right after the Nikon D3 was announced. And that was the first camera with a very, very good image with a high ISO. To get this sunburst in the middle, this is shot with a 16mm Nikkor fisheye lens, but to get this sunburst, that beautiful sunburst in the middle, you need to be at f16 to f22, which is a very small aperture. So very little light coming through. But to freeze the skier going off the top, I want to be at like 25/100th of a second. So very, very fast shutter speed again, because I want every little bit of that snow to be frozen. So in order to have those intersect for proper exposure, we're going to have to be at like ISO 5000. And previous to this camera being introduced, this just really wasn't possible. So whatever camera you shoot with, find out what it does well. Does it shoot well in low light? Well, know that you can raise that ISO, that you can get really fast shutter speeds, or you can continue to shoot after the sun goes down. This is Jackson Hole, Wyoming, backcountry. Shooting after the sun goes down, as I just mentioned. So, knowing your equipment, and that's really part of what will set you apart as a photographer and an artist. Bad weather makes good images. I can't tell you how many times and how many people say, well, I'm not going to go out today, the weather's not that great, and it's raining, it's snowing. But not only are there not going to be a lot of people out, but it really does make for interesting pictures. Especially if you look for nuances and you add just a little bit of color. For instance, the red jacket on a near monochromatic background, just that little splash of color makes something interesting. So just because it's super gnarly out and snowing or raining, go out, find an athlete, make it a project. Go out and produce something fun that day. Photography is supposed to be fun. And in order to become a good outdoor adventure photographer, and or a great one, you really need to be able to deal with the elements. So make sure you're dressing appropriately, layering, because you want to be able to focus on the task at hand and be able to go out and produce images. Camera covers are imperative if you don't have a high budget. Everything from a simple 2-gallon Ziploc bag would be great. You just poke a little hole in the front, slide it up over the front of the lens. Or those trash bags, those clear trash bags that you get in hotel rooms. I always have a couple of those in my bag because you want to make sure you cover equipment. Inversely, Kata and or Aquatech make great custom covers for different cameras, which are great to be able to go out and produce in all kinds of environments. Shot in Colorado, Cardiac Cave, and Jackson Hole. So you can see, I'm not shooting anything. I'm always a little bit lower or a little bit higher. Nothing is shot like just standing at waist level. So, given that sense of scale. This was an interesting shot. This is in Granite Canyon in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Little out-of-bounds ski zone right off of Jackson Hole, and Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, actually called me and asked me to send him a print of this, and it was one of those things as a young photographer, I felt like, I was on top of the world, this guy's super famous climbing, founder of Patagonia, and I asked him why he would want this on his wall, just because I was curious. He's like, oh, well, you can look in the valley there, my house is out in the background. So I went from feeling like I was on top of the world to being like, oh, it's just because his house was in the background. Kind of a funny story. So once you found your first season, for me it was skiing. Find a second season. Go out and find something you enjoy doing, and find that second season. For me, it was kayaking. A buddy of mine in Jackson Hole invited me to Costa Rica. He said, can you kayak? And I said, no, but I can bushwhack. I can get to any spot, and I can make a decent picture. So fell in love with kayaking. It became my second season. Love the white water, the color of the kayaks, as well as doing a lot of things. As I mentioned before, I do a lot of work for Red Bull. This is actually Theo Berman, one of the top Red Bull athletes, or he was. He's retired now. But they require a sequence from every shoot. And these are actually pretty simple, these sequences, to do. So you basically have an athlete, you frame it, you know where the athlete's going to go. Obviously, this is a waterfall. He has about one zone where he's going to go. So you frame it, put it on motor drive, and you take as many pictures as you can throughout that sequence. Bring all those images in. I use aperture. Tone the first one. Have it be perfect. Apply those changes globally to all of the other images in that sequence, all those other separate images. And then you export it into Photoshop, and it's called Merge Panorama. But make sure that it doesn't auto blend. So it'll bring it in, and it's basically bringing it in as layers. What you do next is you are on the top layer, and you erase just below that first boat all the way down, and it reveals that second boat. You go to the second layer, go just past the second boat, and reveal the third boat, and so on and so forth until you get that. And it really makes for some interesting pictures. So get to know the sport and the players involved. And this is something as once you've got that first season, figure out who the players are, who's really good. If you're working with local athletes, find out if there are any professional athletes, because better athletes will make better pictures. This is Jesse Coombs here. This is actually from the video you saw at Abaco Falls. And the stakes get pretty high here. This is a 96-foot tall waterfall, and Jesse walked away relatively unscathed from this. And when I say relatively, I mean that he walked away with compressed lungs, cracked ribs, and a broken rotator cuff. So there's a lot of trust involved that you're going to get that shot and that you're going to bring that home for them. At the end of the day, you're a member of the team, so you can't really ask them to go to the back and do this again. You really don't get any second chances. This is Jesse Coombs again. This is Lower Mesa Falls in Idaho. You can see these sequences, lots of them. They make for interesting pictures. That simple technique. And if you forget today how I said do it, it's pretty simple. If you just Google it, there's lots of different tutorials on it. And if we don't get through everybody's questions today at the end, I'm not sure how many there will be, but if you just tweet at Lucas Gilman and at Sandisk and ask your question, I'll personally respond to everybody's questions today. This is from the Rio Alsaceca in Veracruz, Mexico. Really beautiful spot, but very sketchy. Lots of narcotics trafficking in this area, and we were hearing gunshots in the jungle, and I was with a guide, and I'm asking him, like, are we okay? And he said, yeah, just don't cross the river, you'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, I feel a lot better knowing that there's gunshots and all that. So again, as I mentioned before, put yourself in the best situations. Know the players and do some research. Know what's going to happen. Scout the angle, take lots of test shots. This is Russ Sturgis on the Rio Alsaceca again. So this sequence actually took a long time to put together because I had to find this spot and actually had to cut some vines out of the way so I could actually see this the whole way. So, take that time, take that little bit extra time, put yourself in that best position to make the best possible image. This is Ben Stooksbury, Rio Alsaceca again, first descent. Eric Jackson, looking for that high angle, not necessarily always looking for that same angle, looking for something different. One of the things I really love about adventure sports is that I get to be an active participant. And This is one of my favorite shots. This shot was from an initial Rio Al Seca shoot, but it didn't run for 6 years. And it was one of my favorite shots. And how I got this shot was I got to go first. So I got to rappel down this rope. I got to go across the river. I got to go set up and make this image. So 6 years later, after this was taken, I got an email from National Geographic, and they said they were doing a special Explorers issue. And so I did a submission of all kinds of exploratory and adventure type photography. And this ended up running as the opening two-page spread in the 100th anniversary issue, which was really cool. So, you know, if I can recommend anything, is believe in yourself, believe in your photography, and make sure you go out there and try to push the envelope every given day and, you know, make something unique and a little bit different. So follow your dreams. Be ready for greatness. For me, as a young photographer, we went to India, and that was something that was a little out of my comfort zone. I'd never been to Asia, and I'd never been to a country where it was completely foreign. Not a bit of the language was known to me. So, you know, I really put myself out there. We traveled about 8 days to get to the river that we ended up finally photographing. So we were there for a month, and it took 8 days of planes and trains and ferries and all kinds of crazy stuff to get there. But it was really fun documenting that along the way. And you have to remember, it's not just the picture of the big waterfall. It's everything along the way that you should be documenting. Digital cameras have really come down in price. SanDisk cards as well as the SDCF cards are really well priced these days. So make sure you go out and shoot a lot, because for every 1,000 pictures or so that are submitted to National Geographic magazine, they only usually run 1 or 2 of those, because there's really, you know, the more you shoot, the better your images will be. This is actually the cover of a Patagonia catalog here, and these waves are about 20 feet tall. You can't really tell, but it's kind of crazy how tall they are. As I told you before, really afraid of heights, man-made heights, but you've got to get the shot. So I'm kind of a big guy, about 210, 6 foot tall, and these little guys over here on the left, these little local Indian guys, they're like maybe 5'2" and maybe like 95 pounds soaking wet. But you got to get the shot right. So this bridge is made out of 100% bamboo, with no man-made no metal whatsoever. But so I'm going across this bridge, afraid of heights. This massive river below it. If I fall in the river, I'm pretty much toast. But you got to get the shot. So get across. I make this shot. I knew the kayaker was going to come across because we're all in a group, and I make this shot. The next day we go back by, and they're replacing the bridge. It was like I went across, not only being the largest person to probably ever cross this bridge, but also on the last day it was actually in operation. So I feel pretty lucky that it all worked out. Again, I get to go first. This is crossing another bridge that's made out of all bamboo and vines and rocks. Crazy, crazy area of India, Arunachal Pradesh area. So as a photographer, we're always looking for those moments, those peak moments, those Cartier-Bresson moments. So you've always got to be ready with your camera. So get comfortable with having your camera out of the bag. If you're worried about your lens getting scratched on the front element, there's some great filters out there that are completely clear, aren't going to degrade your image. Put those on the front of your lens, and then you don't have to worry about dust, scratches, et cetera, et cetera. So be ready to have your camera out, because these moments don't happen very often. So you can't recreate these things again. Beautiful area. This is a Siang River here in India, the same river that you saw earlier. Building long-term relationships, specifically with athletes, is really, really important to having not only a successful photography business in the adventure world, but it just makes things a lot easier. So this is Rafa Ortiz, a Red Bull athlete, and we shot this. This is actually the same waterfall you saw that I rappelled by. Nobody ended up running this waterfall that day, but for 4 years in a row, we went back to this waterfall, every year around the same time, waiting for the perfect day, perfect levels, and sort of everything to come together. So, everything came together on this day. This is shot in 2010. We originally went 2006 for the first descent of this area. And Rafa ran this once. So there is no second chance. There is no take two. I mean, this thing took 4 years to come together. And this is where you really need to be able to trust your equipment. Starting with my Nikon cameras, and then the SanDisk cards, and this is really the main reason I was drawn to SanDisk originally, was because of the trust and the reliability. Like I said, there's no take two here, so I need to be able to trust the media that I have in my camera, and that's really what SanDisk has done for me. This image ended up being a finalist in the Red Bull Illume photo competition, which saw almost 35,000 images submitted for the 2013 competition, and is in the traveling exhibit, which is currently going around the world. Sea Fisher. This is actually no Photoshop here, no post-processing. These swirls you see are actually soap bubbles, naturally occurring phenomenon. Leaves fall into the water. They have fatty acids in them. The white water turns, it breaks it up, and it flows downstream to the slack water, and these bubbles basically pool up and to make this film. This is right after shooting a bunch of waterfalls upstream, and I was crossing a bridge, and I saw this as Steve was coming down, and it just happened to be the last light of day. So this is aptly the Black River in northern Wisconsin, which is kind of cool. Dogged. If you want to be an adventure or outdoor photographer, dogged perseverance is really what you have to do and what you have to be. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. You're going to be in less than ideal conditions a lot of times. And the more you can be comfortable in the elements, the more you train for that and you're ready to make good pictures in less than ideal scenarios, the better your photos will be. And here's a good instance of that. This is Mitlaco Falls in the Columbia River Gorge, 101-foot waterfall. This is Evan Garcia, a top kayaking athlete. And you see that beautiful, beautiful green verdant brush on the left side there. Well, that's actually a wall of poison oak. And I am deathly allergic to poison oak. But at the end of the day, the client or myself, you've got to get the shot, right? So I built a makeshift, basically hazmat suit, duct taped my pants down around my shoes, wore gloves, duct taped my long sleeve shirt to the gloves, and wore goggles, and rappelled down to this spot. Because really, once you get to this spot, once you've gotten past all these tough elements, you've gotten into position, the image isn't that hard to take. Anybody can do it, but it's that pushing yourself a little further, getting that better angle, making that picture just a little bit better is what will separate you from everybody else in the pack. And obviously there's a lot of people out there that want to do everything, and want to go out and shoot the exact same things that I do. So this is a typical kit that I would take on a adventure shoot, basically, because I'm shooting both film and video. So lots of SanDisk cards. I actually use the SanDisk Extreme SSDs as recording media in my Atomos recorders. 3 bodies, 24-70, 16 millimeter lens, 50 millimeter, 85 millimeter, 70-200, 300 millimeter, 2.8, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I typically take for an adventure shoot. A lot of stuff. But I'm going to tell you today that the best camera is the one that you carry with you all the time. The little point and shoot. These are all actually taken with Coolpix, Nikon Coolpix little point and shoot cameras. All these shots in the next section are taken 100% with point and shoot cameras. So it doesn't matter if you have the best camera in the world that's back in the car. If you don't have that camera with you, you don't get the shot. So I'd recommend everybody go out and find themselves a compact point and shoot that shoots raw. You can control the shutter speeds. You control the white balance. And it fits comfortably in a pocket or a small bag, and it's something that you want to take with you, because even though I'm a professional photographer, sometimes I want to go out and I want to be able to have a day off too, but I feel guilty if I don't have some sort of camera with me. So make sure you've got something with you. Here's a little technique. This is shot with a P7700. This shot is actually made with a strobe off camera, and you see how it's very blue in the background. So I've set the white balance on the camera on tungsten. That's the little light bulb, that is meant to be shot indoors, because indoors the light is usually very orange from the incandescent bulbs that are inside. So what it does is it adds blue to compensate for that. So I've put a strobe off camera, and I put a full CTO or full tungsten gel over the strobe, so that everything that the strobe lights is the proper color. So the strobe's lighting her face and lighting everything up right on her, and then everything else that's lit by the available light goes blue. So sort of an interesting technique. It's a 15-second exposure, Venice, Italy, shot with a compact camera. Sunrise, Jackson Hole, again putting yourself in that good position. I love the details. That little macro mode on the point-and-shoot camera, the little green flower, means you can get close. You can fill the frame and make some really interesting things. Portraits as well, pretty simple. Manual exposure, take a picture of the background, get that exposure proper, bring in your model, put her in the right spot in the frame, fill the model with light, do a test, too bright, too dark, make some adjustments accordingly, and you'll make some pretty interesting stuff. Be a visual optimist. Go out. So, for instance, these next shots here were all photographed within about 300 feet of each other. So go out and really delve into a subject. Find things that are interesting, uniquely, and visual. Will I ever sell these as a professional? Probably not, but it's a process. I'm training. I'm using my brain to go out and do something. This is a 15-second exposure. I'm practicing techniques. Being a photographer, photography is pretty much the only art form which is based in science. So once you get past that science, when you don't have to think shutter speeds and f-stops and all this and that, and it becomes, you know what you want to produce and you know how to make the camera do that without even thinking about it too much, that's when you'll really start to be successful. Also using built-in things like the panorama mode in the camera to do cool stuff. Long exposures. This is where having that manual setting on the camera, being able to say I want it to be 15 seconds, that's great. Another thing to get these exposures, a 10-stop neutral density filter is a great addition to any kit. It will allow you to take very long exposures and be able to produce really cool stuff. Viper State Beach. This is in Mexico. I was shooting the Nikon Coolpix AW110, a little point-and-shoot waterproof, shockproof camera for a Nikon and Outside Magazine article. And they basically said, go see what it could do. So we went down to Chiapas, which is known for having a lot of Zapatistas, which are really, they're rebels. They want their own state. And they're not huge fans of Americans because the CIA basically tried to help the Mexican government eradicate them back in the 80s. So needless to say, they're not a big fan of Americans. Be prepared, because you never know what's going to happen. And I knew about these rebels and everything. And after I took this shot right here, everything is going perfect. This is the Agua Azul in Chiapas, down on the Guatemala border. I turn around and there are like 20 dudes with machetes, and they're screaming at me like, Estados Unidos, which, they basically ask me, are you American? Are you American? And I'm like, no, soy de Canada, soy de Canada. And, they're screaming at me, and first they wanted $10,000, and then, we had this whole, long, negotiation, and luckily I had the little small cameras, and they were in my pockets, and they didn't even know what we were doing, and after a $1,000 bribe, I walked away with all my fingers and toes intact, and, I was psyched because I was alive and had all my appendages, and the client got their pictures. So be prepared. Know what you might run in against. This is in Costa Rica. A lot of times it's gray outside. If it's gray, shoot black and white. Don't try to force something. So if it's all gray, monochromatic, he's in a gray wetsuit, white and gray board, it's gray, go gray. Adding light, one light off camera. Love the light in Rio. Putting yourself in that good situation. This is right after sunrise. Sorry, this is in Venice. Putting yourself in that good position to make great pictures. Nevis and St. Kitts. So they're just some shots that I've taken with point-and-shoot cameras on my travels. Just carrying it around for the day. Jackson Hole, Wyoming. That's Mount Moran. The Chicago airport. Just was cruising down the moving walkway. Pismo Beach. Sand Dunes National Monument in Colorado. Nevis and St. Kitts. Sebago, Maine. City of Arts and Sciences. I'm not sure how many people have an iPhone out there. There's a great application called Photobrisco. That's Photobriscoe, I think. And it basically figures out your GPS location, and it will show you pictures that have been taken near you. And you can expand that map to, it basically accesses Google Maps and Google Earth, and it shows you all the pictures. And I was on another assignment and saw these pictures of this place, which is the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain. And I was like, I've got to go there. So doing the research and just putting yourself out there. After sunrise, Big Sur, California. This is a light painting shot in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Light paintings are really easy to do. This is actually shot with a Coolpix P77, just a little point-and-shoot camera. ISO 800 to 1600. Put the camera on a tripod. Use a cable release or wireless release to trigger the camera, or you can even use the self-timer. 15-second exposure. And I use like a spotlight that you can buy at like Pep Boys to basically light these trees and make this exposure. So lots of different things you can do. Super simple. Another little technique. So use camera techniques to separate yourself from the pack. So 15-second exposure. This is, not shooting at everything at 250 the second. And that P on top of the camera, that does not stand for perfect. It stands for program. But if you're going to do anything, take control of one aspect. I don't say that everybody needs to go out and shoot completely manual. I don't do that all the time. There's a lot of times where there's a lot of stuff going on, and I don't want to have to be, changing shutter and or aperture. But pick something that's important to you. So, for instance, in this shot, the most important thing to me was having a fast shutter speed to freeze that action. So I chose shutter priority on the Nikon. That's the S. On the Canon, that would be the shutter priority. And so go ahead and choose one thing, either aperture or shutter priority. For this shot again, I wanted the shutter to be 4 seconds. So choose what's important to you in that shot. Go out and figure out what's important. Is it depth of field? Do I want to have a lot of things in focus? I typically shoot pretty wide open with most of my lenses. For instance, f4 or f2.8 because I like shallow depth of field. I like to draw attention to the subject and what I want people to look at. But for this image, I needed a 4-second exposure to make the water move around him. This is just shot near Pismo Beach, and I'm just hand holding it on a pier, leaning against a rail. Pretty simple shot, kind of cool. If you want to shoot reflections, reflection shots, the best time to do that is right after sunrise. It's the same reason that they do crew and rowing and sculling right around that time. So that'll be your best chance to have the least amount of wind. So the only mistakes are the mistakes you don't go out and try. And so that includes using completely wacky shutter speeds and apertures as well as white balances. A lot of times I will shoot sunset with a white balance that is not sunny. Like for instance, this was shot with a fluorescent mode white balance, which gives it that sort of, brings that pink and red into it and everything. Is it correct? No. But is it interesting? Yes. So just because the camera says, oh, it's sunny, and that's where using that creative white balance will really help you. Using lights will really separate you. I use lights a lot. That's one light. This is shot outside of New York for Garmin, one light as well. Disney Concert Hall, one light in the softbox. 15-second exposure, one light in a Schmier beauty dish just off camera. Christian Van Velde, Calpe, Spain. This is an infinity pool. 6 lights, 6 lights. And this is just one light. This is Christian at the infinity pool again. And you can see the background's way blown out. And that was on purpose, right? Because there's really not much detail. The sun's coming in from behind him. So I'm letting the camera's telling me, whoa, whoa, it's way overexposed, but the light's coming from directly behind him. So I take a test shot. I shoot until that background's basically gone. He's almost a silhouette. The next thing I do is I bring a light in, and I light him up and put him on that white background. And it turns out to make a really pretty interesting shot. So pretty simple technique. Again, one light used to freeze all the water droplets, just to add a little bit of dimension, as well as overpower the available light. And as you can see, that background's a little bit dark. Found this guy on my front doorstep, built a little mini studio after the first frost, and because I thought he was toast. And, you know, as you can see, I'm just going out and trying new things. Will they sell? Maybe not, but kind of cool. So I built this little mini studio, run up, download my SanDisk cards, and I go back, and he's gone. But I learned something, you know, not only about shooting on seamless light, but don't trust a grasshopper in your house. Again, this is on fluorescent mode. I've got a strobe off camera with a green gel to compensate for the camera's on the fluorescent mode, because it's adding a lot of reds, and that light you can see is just kissing off the surfer there. Light painting, always looking for a new angle. Shoot a little fashion. If you want to do one thing to sort of separate yourself and take that photography to the next level, it's get at least one light that you can have off camera. That will really take you to that next level, because once you know how to use light, you start seeing light. It's near Red Rocks, Colorado. It's just one light in front of him. So shoot everything. This is actually a client came to me and asked me for this shot. And I was like, oh, great. I don't really shoot families and kids, but they said, we're looking for the shot. The kid with the cupcake frosting all over his face. And I said, great. When does it need to be done? They said, tomorrow. So I go with the neighbor's kid, or go over to the neighbors. They've got a cute kid. Say, hey, can we photograph your kid? And we went out with one light and made a pretty interesting shot. New York, Russ Sturgis, one of the top kayakers in the world, Disney Center again. Practice your craft. Don't buy a camera the day before you go on vacation. Go out and learn how your camera works, because, for instance, this is Chauncey Billups, NBA All-Star, and you don't get a lot of time. For instance, I got 3 minutes to photograph Chauncey. So you can't be getting bogged down in menu functions and how the camera's not working. So know how the camera works and be ready for those situations. Magnus Backstedt, Kristen Vandervelde. You don't get a ton of time with these professional athletes. You get like literally minutes. So you have to be really comfortable with how everything works. David Miller, great guy. New York. Fisheye Lens, Big Sur, California, one of my favorite spots. The sea stacks, that fisheye gave it that real round feeling. A couple lights off camera. Super fast shutter speed. Trying something new. Again, light painting. Something different. Pretty simple. Take an ambient exposure for the whole scene. Right? We got everything dialed. I figured it out. There's a LCD on the back of the camera, right? So you figure that out, and then you just bring in some light. This happens to be a high-power flashlight, and you just basically paint that light onto what you want, whether it be a car, a tree, a model, whatever. Think of pictures in terms of packages, not just a single picture. Think about all the pictures that can be made in this instance, all the pictures around the periphery. Make it into a little story. Make it something unique. It's not just the action. It's the behind the scenes. It's all the other things going on. It's at sunset. It's at sunrise. It's after the sun's gone down. So think of it in terms of stories as well. This is all those last few shots were in Iceland, one of my favorite spots on the planet to go. Can't wait to go back there. Again, this is Iceland. It's gray, shooting gray. So Palouse Falls, this is the largest waterfall ever run. And shooting remote cameras, I shot 3, and they will make you more money because you'll have more images and you'll have more diversity. These images, these 3 shots, they all came together very quickly. This was sort of a shoot. All of a sudden, the levels are right and everything else. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to hammer on this again, but it's all about your equipment and knowing that you can trust your equipment. And again, for me, that's the Nikon cameras and the SanDisk cards, because if you can't trust that you're going to be able to walk in there and document this feat, it'll never happen again. You don't really deserve to be there. So, whatever kind of camera you use, make sure that it works for you, and it makes sure it works when you want it to work. We got these 3 different angles, and the client was super happy. These images have been published all over the world. I think we're up to 300 or 400 times. I did this for Red Bull, and it all worked out, and it was pretty exciting. Ralph Ortiz, again, famous Red Bull athlete, 189 feet, kind of crazy stuff. So I'm going to leave you with this one quote, and this is something that I sort of lived my photography life through, and it's chance favors only the prepared mind. And so if I could recommend anything, it's getting to know your equipment, making sure you go out and buy good products so that when you're out there that you're enjoying photography, because it's all about having fun at the end of the day and enjoying being there, because if you don't enjoy it, you won't do it. Without that, we're going to go into our sort of Q&A section here. So, Sai, you can go ahead and chime in
Sure.
at any time.
Beautiful photos. Great insights, Lucas. Thanks a lot. That was a really inspiring presentation. I'm quite excited to kind of get out there right away and start shooting some extreme photos. But we have a Q&A session before we can do that. So we have a lot of good questions coming in. I'm going to jump right into the first one here. This one's from Rob, and let's start with something basic. How do you keep your video cameras dry, especially when you're kayaking in snow and water?
Yeah, so as far as they're sort of two different beasts. Initially, as far as keeping the cameras dry for the kayaking, I do have some custom, it's a Kata makes a great cover. It goes on really quickly, and it allows you to continue to have control of the camera. Basically there's a Velcro enclosure at the end that goes around the lens, and then there's a clear sort of PVC at the back so you can see all the control dials. Those are, maybe $100, maybe a little more. Like I said before, that's not in the budget, a simple 2-gallon Ziploc that you poke a hole in the front of and slide that lens through with some rubber bands will also suffice as well. Skiing, generally, I shoot for a very short amount of time because once snow gets on the lens anyway, the shot's sort of ruined, so I'll have it in a backpack, a chest pack basically that's super easy to get into, and I'll hold it covered until the athlete's about to where I want them to be, pull it out, and then make those shots.
Right, perfect. I think the next one is from Kirsty. How do you get so comfortable with manual settings shooting action shots? Do you ever use auto settings for anything?
Yes, I do use auto settings. Like I mentioned before, I like the aperture priority and the shutter priority as well, because especially on the remote cameras, because I can't be running around and changing all that when the light is changing. I do shoot manual as well. There are certain instances when the cameras can be tricked, but it's all about getting to know your camera. And if I'm using an automatic setting such as that aperture priority, then I will use the exposure compensation. For instance, if there's something that's backlit and my subject is looking dark, I would use the plus-minus exposure compensation to basically bring that to the proper exposure in that automatic mode.
Perfect. Kirsty, hope you got that. The next one's from Keith, and this is interesting because I have the same question too. How do you keep your electronic camera's operation in cold environments, that is, keeping the batteries warm and lens unfogged? So
I bring extra batteries, first of all, and that's the most important thing because that's basically what's powering the cameras. The cards don't have a problem. The SanDisk cards are great, even in super cold environments, which film, we used to have problems with that. But the cards are great. So I bring extra batteries, and I will keep them close to my core and typically keep them in an inside pocket with those like hand warmers you can get at ski shops, and keep those batteries warm. And The battery technology has gotten better over the years, but just having those fresh, warm batteries that you can swap out throughout the day will really help the longevity of your cameras in shooting in cold environments.
Perfect. The next one's from Renee. Is there a means of doing the layering technique in Lightroom?
There's not, that I know of, a way to do that layering technique within Lightroom because Lightroom typically doesn't do layers, and you can't really erase that. The only way that I've been able to figure out how to do that is through any of the Photoshops and such.
Okay. The next one's from Kirsty as well. Would you recommend giving away shots to companies, magazines, etc., to get your name out there?
Well, that's a really good question, and that's it's a slippery slope. I definitely would recommend that people go out there and get their work seen by as many people as possible. But I would draw the line at giving it away. You have to remember that your photography has a value, and that you have a value as an artist and as a photographer. So, when companies approach you, make sure that they understand that, and make sure that, say it's an outdoor apparel company, maybe they don't have a budget to pay you per se, but maybe they can trade you a coat or something like that. So, make sure that you always remember that your photography has a value, and come to some sort of an arrangement, whether it's they trade something, or maybe you give them the shot now, but they're going to hire you for a job down the road. Really believe in yourself as a photographer and artist, because the work does have value.
Perfect. The next one's from Joel. Do you think a UV filter degrades a digital image?
Well, that really depends on the grade of UV filter you buy. If you buy one of the sort of generic ones off of the shelf, I would say that you're probably going to have the clarity of glass just is not as good. If you buy a decent quality UV filter, I don't think you have any issues. All
right. Hope you got that, Joel. The next one is, keeping all the beginners in mind here. We get asked this every webinar. So this is about what's the best camera to buy as a beginner. I would be taking sky faces and nature, also building structures of interest.
What I would find is a kit camera. Initially, that's a great camera to start with because you get a discount on the kit lens that comes with it. There's a great entry-level camera that Nikon makes, a D3100, or I think it might be a D3200. Very approachable price point, great quality. Not going to break the bank, but still has a lot of the settings that you would want to be able to not outgrow that camera, right after you got into it. So go out, do the research, figure out what your budget is, and then there's a lot of reviews online, DP Review or F-Stoppers, et cetera, that you could go out and you could figure out, what the best camera is, as well as, physically going into a camera store and figuring out what camera feels best in your hands.
It makes perfect sense. This one is interesting, and I'd like to know what the answer is here too. How do you get in contact with guides in different countries to get to the remote locations? Your photos were all over the world. I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah, so it's really changed over the years. A lot of research is done. Typically, the first thing I would do is find the location that I want to go. Say I want to go to India, and then I would find specific rivers and things like that. And from there, there's, everybody has a web page now. Everybody has a Facebook page. And just reaching out and asking questions and doing that research before you go out the door and before you get to that location will really benefit you. The more you can have your ducks in a row and be ready to go out and photograph things and not be, driving around town looking for a local guide, the better off you're going to be.
All right, perfect. The next one's from Paula. What lenses do you use for kayaking? Is there anything specific you use there?
My typical kit would be a Nikon D800 and a 24-70 and a 70-200. So The focal length would be a 24 millimeter to 70 millimeter zoom, which is great because it gives you a fairly wide-angle lens to a fairly telephoto lens, and then that 70 millimeter to 200 millimeter zoom is another lens that's great. Most of the manufacturers have something in that sort of zone, and those are two great lenses that basically cover you for that whole thing. I will say recently I just picked up the new Nikon AW1, which is a waterproof lens, or waterproof point-and-shoot camera that has interchangeable lenses, which is kind of cool because the camera can actually go down to like 45 feet. So you can be shooting in super windy, wet environments, and you don't have to worry about the camera. So I'm excited to try that out. I haven't gotten to go out a bunch with that yet, but something new to think about.
Well, I hope that makes sense. And just to follow up with that, how do you transport your equipment in a river kayak?
So it'll all go in a waterproof bag, basically, that goes between your knees or a backpack. And there's a bunch of different companies. Watershed makes a nice one specifically for kayaking that's also used by the Navy SEALs. So you basically have a really waterproof container for your camera. You don't need the fanciest backpack out there, but what you do need is good padding, whether you're wrapping your lenses and or cameras in your extra clothes. But you just need to make sure that that stuff is secured and not banging around.
All right, perfect. The next one's on shutter speeds, and this is from Binu. For the shutter speeds in the range of seconds, is a camera on a tripod always used?
Yeah, so after I get to about 1/15 of a second, so it'll be 1/15 of a second, I typically will put a camera on a tripod. And another note of advice on a tripod, find a tripod that you're actually going to use, something lightweight, something that you will actually take with you, because it doesn't matter if you've got the fanciest big tripod in the world if you leave it in the trunk because it's too heavy to take out. So even if it's just a little mini tripod, make sure you've got something with you that you're actually going to carry. But yeah, so after I get down to about 1/15 of a second or slower, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second, 4 second, I typically will put it on a tripod. You can also use like a bean bag to put your camera on. Also put a camera on a rock with a jacket underneath it, and use the self-timer to trigger the camera. But basically just need to make sure that camera is rock solid and stable.
All right. The next one's from Catherine. This is on behalf of all the beginners out there. For those of us just getting started, what are the top 3 lenses you recommend purchasing?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
For the beginners out there, what are the top 3 lenses you recommend purchasing?
So I would say the top 3 lenses would be you can buy a straight 24 millimeter fixed focal length lens, like an f2.8, whichever camera manufacturer you work with. And that is a great lens because it's wide. It's a wide angle lens. It's relatively inexpensive, but they're always super sharp. The next lens that I would tell people to get would be a 50 millimeter lens. 50 millimeter 1.4, so that means it has a very large aperture. It allows you to shoot indoors and in very low light. And 50 millimeter lenses are really, really affordable. I mean, I think you can get one for about $125 depending on manufacturer. But a 50 millimeter lens is great because it allows you to shoot, street photography outside at night, as well as indoor family situations without using flash. The next one I would say would be to get some sort of medium zoom, maybe like a 28 to 105. There's a great range. There's a bunch of different companies that make a 28 to 105 because that just basically gives you a nice zoom range so that if you're shooting travel photography or just general interest photography, sometimes you can't get down close, but it'll give you that sort of zoom range to make sure you're getting the pictures you want.
Perfect. The next one's also about a lens from Mike, just to follow up with that. Any tips for using a telephoto lens to capture close-up action shots?
Yeah, so really fast shutter speed. So the old traditional mantra was you need a shutter speed at least twice as fast as your telephoto lens. I'd say go 4 times faster. So if you've got a 300 millimeter telephoto lens, they say 600th of a second or 500th of a second. I'd be more like 1,000th of a second or 1,500th of a second. So it's amazing how much better, it doesn't matter what you're shooting, whether it's soccer or surfing or whatever, that fast shutter speed is really going to allow you to freeze that action. Also, make sure you have a decent aperture, say 5.6, and the current cameras out there do really well with high ISO. Don't be afraid to go to like ISO 800 or 1600 because it's still going to look great. So make sure you use a fast shutter speed, at least 4 times the focal length of your lens, and a good aperture like 5.6.
All right, Lucas, we'll take one last question, and I think this is a fitting one. So I think this one's from Valina. What else have you not done in your photography career that you would like to pursue?
I would really like to go out and focus on a portrait series. I love photographing athletes and models, and as you can see, a lot of my images are little person, big landscape, and it's really fun interacting with the athletes and the models. So I'd like to go out and do just a portrait series on people and athletes, and focus on lighting and just do something that's sort of out of the box for me.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot, Lucas. With that, we come to the end of the session. I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us for our Adventure Photography webinar, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.